What purpose does that serve? Ring of Honor was back in New York this past Friday night. Brand new venue for them for the first time. MCU Park in Coney Island, which is the home of the Brooklyn Cyclones minor league baseball team. And Ring of Honor taking the old slot that TNA had for, I'd say, about 5 years. TNA, with all the TV they were taping in New York City, I guess they figured they probably weren't going to be able to sell many more tickets if they came back to New York for another show. And so Ring of Honor got the spot instead, their Field of Honor show. Last Monday, according to the person I talked to with the stadium when I checked with them, they had about 900 tickets sold, and they were hoping by showtime to have 1,500. If they didn't get there, they were close. But keep in mind, it is a stadium that fits 7,500 people. When TNA first came to the ballpark for their first show, they had 5,500, which was a very healthy crowd. It was probably their biggest crowd in this country for any show at that time. Every summer thereafter, the crowd dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. They never quite hit that 5,500 mark again. And I guess the big difference is that TNA has national cable television. Ring of Honor does not. I expected them to do a little bit better, but if they did hit 1,500, it's a pretty good number. You know, it's a pretty good number. At the Manhattan Center for a show, they would usually get in the 2,000 to 2,300 range, so this was less. But it is a new venue. It is harder to get to for some people. I mean, it's not hard to get to. It's the last stop on a bunch of different train lines, and you come out from the train, and it's literally 2 blocks away. But still, you know, it's not as easy as it would be to get to at the Manhattan Center. The Manhattan Center, you get off at Port Authority. You're right there by Madison Square Garden. It's a big transportation hub, and it's literally right there. So they had a decent crowd, but when I said earlier in the show was, I mentioned like a bad crowd. I didn't mean bad crowd in terms of attendance, because they had a decent number of people there. Not great. But I meant crowd behavior. The crowd really embarrassed itself to the point where I was almost ashamed even, you know, to kind of be from Brooklyn at one point. And maybe that's a little extreme, but there was a moment in one of the matches, and we'll get into it when I get to that match. It was the ACH match, where things just devolved, and it really marred the show. It didn't ruin the show, but it really left a black mark on it, and I think it was shameful what was going on during that match. So we started out with a steel cage match. It was Jay Lethal against Matt Taven, with the stipulation being that if Taven won the championship, he'd get 5 minutes alone inside the cage with Truth Martini, Jay Lethal's manager. And if Matt Taven did not win the championship, he would never again be able to challenge for the TV title. So they had the cage set up because I think they wanted to quickly take it down, so they figured let's have that match first and get it out of the way, which was smart. So they did the match. Jay Lethal won, which shocked me. I thought for sure Matt Taven was winning. So Lethal retained the title. And it was so weird because the match ends, okay, Lethal wins. It's the first match of the show, and then they announce, we're now taking an intermission because they had to take the cage down. And so intermission went on for like 15 minutes. I mean, it was, you know, it wasn't short. Finally, the action continued. We had Takaki Watanabe from New Japan Pro Wrestling against Mark Briscoe. I was kind of moving around during this match. I think Briscoe won. I'm pretty sure Briscoe won. Cheeseburger and Brutal Bob Evans against Moose, whose real name is Quinn Ojanaka, and R.D. Evans. Ojanaka played for the Falcons, the Rams, the Colts, the Patriots during his NFL career. He's only 30 years old. Technically, he's still a free agent. He can go back to playing football, but he wanted to try pro wrestling, and ROH signed him, and I think he's been training at the ROH Academy, and he's still very new to this. Big guy. Definitely has the size, very green, but he was in there teaming up with R.D. Evans, and the two of them won the match. So, big win for them. Mike Bennett beat Rocky Romero. You don't realize how hot Maria Kanellis is until you see her in person. She's very, very attractive if you see her in photos, if you're watching an ROH show, let's say on iPay-per-view, or their TV show if you have ROH TV in your area. You've got to see this woman in the flesh, in person, to truly appreciate her magnificence. She is the one that got away from WWE. I don't know how you let a girl like that go. Not only is she hot, but she was actually over. She was very popular when she was in WWE. I don't remember if it had to do with John Cena or not. There was something that happened, and I think that's why she got let go. But Hey, WWE's loss is both Mike Bennett and ROH's gain. They are actually a very entertaining act together. So Bennett wins. BJ Whitmer, Roderick Strong, Jimmy Jacobs, The Decade, beat 3 students from the Ring of Honor Academy, substituting for War Machine. Not to be confused with the MMA fighter of the same name, who beat the shit out of his porn star girlfriend and finally got apprehended by the cops the other night. That menace to society now is off the streets. So one half of War Machine, his name is Roe. He was involved in a motorcycle wreck last week. He's going to be out for a while. They were supposed to challenge The Decade here. Obviously, they could not. So they had 3 students from the ROH Academy, one of whom, probably the one that was in the best physical shape, had half his face painted white. And I think it was painted white to look like a baseball. But like for where we were sitting, between the white face paint and the pants he was wearing, it was the exact same tights that Seth Rollins wears in WWE, those tight pants, those tight leather pants. So he got chants of Sting Rollins. The people morphed 2 wrestlers together, and they kept chanting Sting Rollins at this guy. But The Decade wins in the end, and Rose's tag team partner Hanson did come out at one point because the heels kept beating the crap when the match was over out of the students. They couldn't defend themselves. So the one uninjured member of the War Machine team came out to chase the heels away. But again, hey, that goes back to what I said earlier, right, about Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards, and how when an injury happens or if somebody fucks up in some other way, if you're part of a tag team, what happens to your partner directly influences your career. That's the risk you run when you're part of a tag team. Silas Young and Tommaso Ciampa. Silas Young gets the win. Pretty good match. Cedric Alexander and ACH. This is the match where the crowd, went into business for themselves. And what ended up happening is, among other chants and among other stupid things that were going on, there were some fans who were throwing streamers into the ring during the match. Now, at ROH shows, it's commonplace, as you would see in Japan, to have streamers thrown at you. It's a sign of respect. So you throw streamers at the guy before the match, during ring intros. And people will quickly scurry in the ring, clean up the streamers, and the match goes on. You don't throw fucking streamers into the match, into the ring during the match. You don't do that. Now you're just throwing debris and trash into the ring, and you're going to get your ass removed and ejected, which is what should have happened. I think they only gave the people warnings. Me, I would have kicked their ass right out of there. So that's number one. Number two, the crowd decided that they would kind of divide. It was like divide and conquer almost, where the crowd that was in front of the baseball net, because they kept the net up. Our seats were behind the net in the actual stands. If you had a VIP ticket, you were in front of the net on the field. What used to be dirt. It's not dirt anymore because Hurricane Sandy destroyed the field. And so now it's, I think, AstroTurf. But so you had the fans on the field, and you had the fans behind the net. And for whatever reason, a war broke out between the two sides. So the people that were sitting in our section behind the net, the so-called cheap seats, which weren't that cheap, started chanting $40, $40, $40 at the crowd in front, as if to say, well, you guys overspent on your tickets, you're stupid, so F you. And the people in the VIP seats started chanting VIP. I posted a little video clip on my Instagram page, a brief clip of what was going on. And, at first it was kind of amusing, but then when it kept going on and on and on, and people were throwing streamers in the ring, meanwhile, you've got ACH, and who's awesome, and Cedric Alexander in the ring busting their ass trying to have a great match, and nobody is paying attention to what those two guys are doing. It was just complete disrespect for no reason. You don't throw shit in the ring. The chants didn't even make sense. It wasn't like they were chanting at the guys. It had something to do with, like, the wrestlers. It had nothing to do with the wrestlers at all. The crowd went into business for itself. It was all about them. A couple of morons started to chant, "We are awesome," in the VIP section. Seriously, we are awesome. They thought it would be appropriate to start chanting, I guess because they were sitting 5 feet in front of where we were sitting. So that made them awesome. No, that made them stupid, is what that made them. So this was an embarrassment. It had nothing to do with the wrestlers. It was really a shame. I felt bad for those two guys. And in the end, Cedric Alexander got the win with some sort of driver powerbomb type move. ACH landed right on top of his head. it looked like he legitimately spiked himself or got spiked into the mat and may have been hurt. He ended up walking off. I haven't read or heard anything about him being injured or going for a test or anything like that, so it seems like he's okay, but that was a really scary moment, and that would have made it so much worse for him to like break his neck or suffer a bad injury in that match when people weren't even paying attention. You know, this was embarrassing, and the people who started those chants should be ashamed of themselves. Then we had a tag team title match. Red Dragon, Bobby Fish, Kyle O'Reilly, perhaps the best tag team in the world right now, against Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian, the former Bad Influence. I actually thought it was a good match with a very lame, disappointing finish. It was almost more of an angle than anything else. There was interference from the Decade. I guess that starts a program now between the Decade and Daniels and Kazarian since they cost them the match. So it was a good match, nothing great, lame finish. We got another intermission at this point for fireworks because every Friday night in Coney Island, they shoot off fireworks at 9:45 p.m. no matter what. You don't want fireworks going off if you're in the middle of a wrestling show trying to have a match. So they paused the show at that point for another intermission while the fireworks went off. And I thought it was kind of funny because as this is going on the field, kind of in the infield, you had Bobby Cruz, the ring announcer, and Steve Corino playing catch. Just throwing a ball back and forth for like 20 minutes until this intermission finally is over. And then it was time for the main event. Four-way match for the ROH World Championship. Michael Elgin, the defending champion, against the IWGP champion, back fresh from New Japan, AJ Styles, who got the biggest reaction of anybody on this show. Jay Briscoe and Adam Cole, the former champion. This was the best match on the entire show. People were definitely into this match, unlike some of the other ones. Great near falls at the end. Elgin wins, retains the title with an Elgin bomb on Cole. Adam Cole is great, by the way. He's very entertaining to watch, and the things he shouts during the match. So Cole is great. Elgin, and that's the only time, by the way, you'll ever hear me use that expression, Cole is great, on this show. So Elgin retains the championship. The first match and the last match were the best matches on the entire show. The ACH Alexander stuff, through no fault of their own, was an embarrassment and a debacle in many ways. Not the best ROH show I've ever been to. I'm not really even sure that environment works for Ring of Honor as well as an indoor building would. They'll be back indoors for Final Battle, their big final show of the year, coming up on Sunday, December 7th at Terminal 5 in Hell's Kitchen, New York City, Bully Ray's old stomping grounds. It's a nightclub that used to be known as the Mirage, and if that sounds familiar to any of you, the Mirage nightclub is where the very first Shotgun Saturday Night was taped. And by the way, why aren't those shows on the network? That's another question. Anyway, it was closed. I didn't know this. I had to look this up, but it was closed originally by the DEA in 2003, which should tell you what was going on over there. If the Drug Enforcement Administration had to shut them down. Fits about 3,000 people. The new venue does. Multiple levels with different music being played on each. I've never been there, but to me it sounds a lot like Webster Hall, which is where I went for my first TNA show. My first ever TNA event I ever went to was, I believe, their first New York City show at Webster Hall 6 years ago. I remember walking in, not knowing where the hell our seats were, and seeing this attractive older lady. She was wearing jeans, just standing there. And, she kind of caught my eye a little bit, and I'm looking and I'm thinking, all right, I'll go ask her where I'm supposed to go. It looks like she may be part of this whole thing here. And she was very nice, really nice, told me exactly where I needed to go. I didn't find out until later that night that the nice older lady that helped me out was Dixie Carter. I liked her better when she stayed off TV and I had no idea who she was. So if this is anything like that, it's a small venue but very intimate with a rowdy crowd. It could make for an interesting night. I'll probably be there. I don't have my ticket yet, but I am planning on going. And with the date being a Sunday, it would make sense for that to be the next Ring of Honor pay-per-view. The first one they did back in June reportedly did about 12,000 buys, which is more than most TNA pay-per-views in recent years have done. I guess that number was good enough. We'll know for sure soon if it's going to be on pay-per-view. That would be my guess, since whenever Ring of Honor comes to New York for a show, it's almost always on a Friday night or a Saturday night. I can't remember there being a Sunday night show. I'm not saying there hasn't been, but the fact that it's on a Sunday night, it's their big Final Battle show, that was the rumor that if they did well enough in June, their second show would be the one in December. All the signs are there. I guess we'll know soon enough.